Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here. 4 weeks into the NBA season and we have seen some more shakers and movers as the week has gone on. Some really good performances, in fact one of the best performing weeks overall for this season for any team, or for most teams actually, and let alone players in the league. We'll have a look through to see who our best players in each conference were. We'll have a look at the standings and see where everything is faring there. And of course, as I mentioned, some interesting results, some interesting players popping up amongst the best in the league. Some teams starting to make a bit of a move, some players starting to find a bit of a groove. Other teams that we thought may fall by the wayside certainly have started to do that and done it in a really big way, unfortunately. But we'll check that out as well. And let's cover off everything that's happened in week 4 of the 2023 NBA season. Of course, we start over in the East. The Atlanta Hawks 1-2 in the week, 6-6 on the season. Surprisingly, I've gone with Jalen Johnson as their best performer on the week. You'll see why in a moment. 17.3 points, 5.7 rebounds and assists, 0.7 steals and 2 blocks a game, less than 2 turnovers, and epically efficient from the field. They defeated Detroit 126-120. Couldn't get the job done against New York, losing 116-114 and going down by 10 to Philadelphia, 126-116. What will it take for this team to be efficient? They need players that can score with efficiency. They need players who have reasonable turnovers to the pace of the game. At the moment, their leaders aren't doing that. And on top, they don't have any great defenders. So 6-6 is probably a really lucky stage for them to be at. And if they hadn't played so many teams that are sort of finding their groove or haven't yet had a chance to find their groove, they're probably in a far worse spot of bother, the Hawks. And I think that one's going to certainly come to the forefront a little later on, or certainly as the season progresses. I think by the end of December, I'd be shocked if they were well above 500 or well and truly in the playoff picture, let alone not fighting for a playing position there. I just don't get how a team that can't score efficiently, who turns the ball over, who doesn't play defense, is somehow 500. It's a really strange concept to me. We'll see how it continues to play out, but Atlanta have a fair bit of work to do on that front. Over to Boston, they had another big week and continue to stake their claim as the best team in the East and certainly an NBA Finals chance. 3-1 on the week, 11-3 on the season. Their best performer, Jason Tatum, 27.8 points, 9.3 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 1 steal, 0.8 blocks. Had an inefficient week by his standards when you're looking at the turnovers there. Could have been better from the field. But at the end of the day, they got the 3-1 record there. Lost out to Charlotte in a really tight one there. And it took a lot for Charlotte to beat Boston in that one. They did defeat Philadelphia 117-107. They did defeat Toronto 108-105. And they did defeat Memphis 102-100. So certainly looked like there was going to be a game they were going to drop. I don't think anyone would have granted it to be Charlotte. Nonetheless, it happened. You'll have to move on from that. They're going to be happy with an 11-3 start and a 3-1 week. At the end of the day, it's going to be a matter of if they're going to win in the conference finals, and certainly if they're going to win a championship, can their leaders maintain their composure come June? That's the only big question right now for Boston, because we saw when they went to the NBA Finals, they're going to use the whole Tatum was younger. But at the end of the day, you've got to take into effect that if you do turn up, you've got to play. And if you don't play, you don't get paid, you don't win. And Jason Tatum really didn't turn up in that NBA Finals series, had a really bad Finals series in comparison to the status that everyone had him around the league. Yeah, you had some performances there from Jaylen Brown. You probably had a deeper team defensively at that stage, but the question does come down to whether you'll lead a step up in the postseason. That's the difference between success ultimately for Boston right now, because they've got it at both ends of the floor. They've got really high caliber star players. They've got really high caliber role players, and they've got players that play both ends of the floor. So can they stand up and be composed in June? The only question for me for the Boston Celtics. Over to the Nets, 1-2 in the week, so they're just around that 500 mark on the season, 6-7. And Lonnie Walker again just comes down to efficiency. Thought he was their best player once again. 20 points, 3.7 rebounds, 1.3 assists and a block a game. Only the 2 turnovers. and essentially had the same amount of possessions as Mikal Bridges, and I thought he was, just more efficient and had a better week than Mikal Bridges did. 50% from the field, 45.8 from deep, 83.3 from the free throw line. Defeated Orlando by 20, then lost out to Miami 122-115, and lost out to Philadelphia 121-99. I think the question now becomes, is Lonnie Walker a genuine third option for this team? You're going to look efficiently how he plays and how he scores. If I'm only getting 20 points out of him, but he's scoring 50% of his shots, keep giving him the ball. Doesn't turn it over much. Can provide a little bit of on-ball pressure when you need it. Can run as a point guard if you need it. I think that would make Cam Thomas's life, Mikal Bridges' life, everyone else's life a lot easier if he was the third option on this team. Spencer Dinwiddie can still get points. There's no stress on that one there. It's fine. Ben Simmons can still run around and be a defensive pest. That's fine. They've got those outs there. Nick Claxton can continue to play defense. I just think if you look at someone like a Lonnie Walker, who's clearly got that ability to do it, who's clearly wanting to take that step, and has been one of the most improved players in the league, kind of got to take a chance. You got nothing to lose if you're Brooklyn. I think it's something they really have to consider. Lonnie Walker as a third option. He's showing promise. See what he can do in week 3. See how his measurables are by that point. But at the moment, he's playing some really good basketball. Over to Charlotte, 1-3 on the week. Very lucky that it wasn't 0-4. 4-9 on the year. Miles Bridges has returned, and we'll get to that in a second. But their best performer was LaMelo Ball. 33.8 points, 6.3 rebounds, 8.3 assists, 1.8 steals, 0.3 blocks, 5.5 turnovers though, which doesn't bode well when you shoot a tad over 46%. Closer to 47%, maybe it's not too bad, but 5.5 turnovers, really costly, particularly when you're going to look at, giving the opposition an extra 5 possessions in a game like they did against Miami there. They lose by 6. Can be a difference maker. They lose to the Heat, obviously, 111-105. They lost to the Bucks, 130-99. So, again, no problems. Again, those defensive problems coming to the forefront. And lost to New York, 122-108. Did get the win against Boston, but they are still conceding a lot of points. The question is, are there going to be issues with Miles Bridges? Everyone knows the story with Miles Bridges and the alleged incidences and the accusations and the charges and everything of that nature. How does this team fit? Now, I'm on record before any of this as pointing out how good of a player he was becoming and developing, how this would look with LaMelo. But you've got to also take the fact in that all reports right now show that he's not a really good guy. Not the kind of person you really need around the team if that's the level of ethos that he's bringing into the locker room. The Miles Bridges factor here is huge for them on the court, obviously, because the guy brings, a big body with athleticism, power scoring, the ability to rebound. But can you really afford to have any issues with him? My answer is no. And the fact that he's back is a miracle, in my opinion. And for Charlotte, it's interesting. I think the best way to put it is that it's interesting. We'll see if there's going to be any further issues with Miles Bridges on this team. Over to Chicago, they continue to dwindle and certainly don't look like a team that has any interest in being together for much longer. 1-3 on the week, 5-10 on the season. Their best performer, ironically, the guy that they're looking to get rid of or a guy who wants out, Zach LaVine. 19.8 points, 5.8 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 1.3 steals and 0.3 blocks on 2 turnovers. Had an efficient scoring split. But again, it's really a rounded 26-4 from a guy who needs to be, 25, 26 a game along with DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic around that 20 points as well. Lost to Orlando in a scrape-out battle, 96-94, and lost the return battle, 103-97. Defeated the Heat early in their 2 games mini-series throughout the week, only by 5 points to end their winning streak. And then Miami beat them in return by 8 points. When are they going to execute their trades? When are they going to get this done? It's really the big question right now. DeRozan's not providing any clarity on his contract situation until any of this is done. Levine essentially is keen to get moving. Caruso's being talked about as well. There's 3 of your starting 5 that essentially might not be on the team in December. Just get rid of them now. Deal with the situation. Move on from it. Give some clarity to your fans. Give some clarity to the league. And as dumb as it sounds, get some clarity to these players, because they're going to want to know what they're doing, where they're going, how they're doing it, all the things of that nature. So just execute the trade. Just get it over and done with. There's no point to be sitting here mumbling around, working out what's going to go on here with the Bulls. Get it over and done with. Get everyone moving. Get them in the right spots. Over to Cleveland, they've bounced back very nicely. I thought they were going to struggle at one point here just with the way that their lineups are being. But 3-0 on the week, 7-6 on the season. Evan Mobley, their best performer, 18.3 points, 10.7 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 0.7 steals and 1.7 blocks on 2 turnovers. He was a genuine Defensive Player of the Year candidate last year, and I still think he's one of the best defenders in the league this year. 70.6% from the field. Really simple stuff. Get him the ball, he will score in his spots, and he'll do it efficiently. Problem is going to the line, and that's what limits his total growth. Because if he's going to get fouled and just go to the line and not make them, it becomes a Shaquille O'Neal situation. You've got to be absolute all-time elite from the field with size and presence if you're going to avoid anything from the free throw line. They won by all of their games, as I mentioned. Defeated Portland 109-95, defeated Detroit 108-100, defeated Denver 121-109. And I think it's going to be a matter for this team of finding a consistent rotation. They seem to have a lot of bodies in and out of the starting lineup. Yeah, they've got guys coming back. Yeah, they've got guys that are healthy. Yeah, they've got guys on minutes rotations. Some guys are a little bit touch and go with injuries at the moment. I get it. But when they're finding consistency in a lineup and consistency in a rotation, you're going to see chemistry build. They're a good enough team. They'll start winning games. They do need to reach that point sooner rather than later. If they don't reach that point sooner rather than later, and you keep this discombobulation going of players in and out, yeah, there's injuries, but how do we manage their minutes? And he's starring, but how do we get him more possessions? You're just going to continue to run into headaches, and you're going to sit, yeah, you're going to maybe be a 500 team, a few games above 500, but you're not going to be anything special. And teams that build into those top 3-4 in the East, that certainly don't have those chemistry issues, that certainly have those lineups matched up, will beat them, and beat them comprehensively. Surprisingly, the Knicks did it last year. I still don't know how New York did that. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of investigation into how the Knicks managed to win a playoff series last year the way they've been this year. But for Cleveland, it is just a matter of getting that consistent lineup, a consistent rotation, consistent minutes with everybody. Once they're able to build that, I think then, yeah, they're going to be able to take that continued step. They're a genuine second-round team when they do things like that. You know, they can be a top 4 team in the East when they do things like that. Problem is they're not doing it at the moment, so they'll need to certainly work on that one. Meanwhile, this will be a really quick one. Over to Detroit. Once again, 0-4 in the week. They've won 2 games all season. Their best player was Marvin Bagley. And look at that. A rounded 14-6-2. 64% from the field, great. There's a lot going wrong with your team. Nothing against Marvin Bagley, the guy can play. But there's something wrong with your team when he is the leader of a team for a week. They lost all 4 games, lost to Atlanta 126-120, lost to Cleveland 108-100, got thumped by Toronto 142-113, and couldn't scrape one against Denver even after Mike Malone and Nikola Jokic were ejected. My question for Denver is, can Ausar Thompson make the all-rookie team on this team? Is it possible for a team potentially to only win 10 games and have a guy that could be or should be on the all-rookie first team? That's the ultimate question for me in regards to Detroit. Because right now, flat out, they suck. Their shining light is Ausar Thompson right now, and I don't know whether he's going to get the recognition he should get because he's playing on a team that's so bad. Over to Indiana, 1-1 on the week, and a really interesting week for them. And it might be one that really raises some questions. I mean, they're 7-5 in the season, so they're still above 500, still playing like a playoff team. In fact, for those that weren't really paying attention to Indiana last year, they're playing very similar to how they were before all the injuries started to pipe up for them and they had to shut the season down. Tyrese Halliburton, their best player, still remains their best player and still remains an All-NBA candidate this year. 22.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 9 assists, a steal and a block on 2 turnovers. It's the efficiency with the ball in hand, with the turnovers and the scoring that's really, well, with the assist and scoring that's really impressive me about Haliburton this season. Around the 47% mark from the field, over 50% from deep, and making them from the line. Defeated Philadelphia 132-126, but lost to Orlando 128-116, and I just wonder whether the issue with their lineup right now is a lack of defense on the perimeter. Is it an issue? It's all well and good to have this high-octane offense. It's really good to see they've got guys that can come in and plug gaps and slowly start to get things done. And you've got Miles Turner as a really good big. You've got Obi Toppin as a really, really good big. But how does that help on the perimeter when they can't stop anything? And offensively, they're going to win. They're going to win games offensively. There's no doubt about that. I don't think anyone's questioning the fact that they're going to win games offensively. It's on the defensive end that's going to be their absolute nightmare, because if they don't win these games, you know, in that way, then they're going to be in a real spot of bother, because it's going to be very hard for them to try and compete with teams that are better defensively. It's going to be very hard for them to compete with teams that not only are they good defensively, but they're good in transition. That is just a confidence shot right there to any team. We will see how they look to develop their perimeter defense. I'm not overly confident on it, because, again, I just think they're going to be winning games offensively right now. And if they feed internally, great. If they're going to continue to feed internally and get things done, that's fine. But if you run into a team that's really strong on the perimeter, this is where someone like a Boston would get them. It's where Tyrese Maxey would cause issues. It's where Damian Lillard would cause issues. To an extent, it's where Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson cause issues. If Atlanta had a miracle run, I could imagine Dejounte Murray and Trae Young would cause issues. Indiana just probably need to refine that perimeter defense if they're going to really make a stab at it. Over to Miami, this is a team that looked all but shot at the start of the season. Some people sort of wondering, well, has their time run out? And then once again, they bounce back with another big week, 3-1 and 9-5 on the season. And here is the man that I think is one of the 4 best centres this season. He's fluctuating between 3 and 4. Him and Domantas Sabonis are just battling for that 3rd best centre spot in the league right now. Bam Adebayo had a week of 22 points, 9.8 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 1.5 steals and 0.3 blocks. It ultimately came down to efficient possession of the basketball to select him, but Jimmy Butler had another big week as well, 1.8 turnovers there for Bam. Shot 56.1 from the field, didn't take a 3, but converted from the line at nearly 89%. They defeated Charlotte 111-105, defeated Brooklyn 122-115, just lost to Chicago, so the winning streak went out the door there, 102-97, but then won the rematch 118-110. And as I mentioned, Butler having a really big week. Has he started to find his feet? Jimmy Butler's a player that is certainly polarising for some, but since being in Miami has proven why he has and can be the man, and why many a team, whether that be Philadelphia, whether that be Minnesota, whether that be Chicago, squandered his talent, squandered his leadership, squandered his intensity, because he has shown how good of a player he is, how good of a leader he is, and exactly what he can bring to a team. He's finding his feet once. He's finally starting to find his feet. And if Jimmy Butler's going to go 25-5-5 again this season, you're going to have Bam having 25-10-5, and you're going to have Tyler Hero going to be able to put points up when he's back. And all of a sudden, the defensive game has lifted because of Bam and Jimmy, and offensively, they've got young guys who can score as well. It becomes a very interesting looking team, a potential top 4 team. But aside that isn't, if they aren't in the top 4, don't write them off, because they will give you every challenge imaginable. They've been to 2 finals in 4 years, neither of which they were expected to go to. You just can't write the Heat off. It's as simple as that. Over to the Bucks, and they have really started to click, and this week was a real turning point for them. 4-0 on the week, 10-4 on the season. They are genuinely among the 3 best teams in the East once again. Giannis had some huge games, but he didn't play all 4 games. And it's hard for me, unless he was going to average 50 in those 3 games, to give him that nod. It does go to Damian Lillard, though, who had a really nice week. 28.3 points, 4.3 rebounds, 9.3 assists, a steal on 2 turnovers. Now, Sure, the scoring efficiency from the field wasn't great, but he did shoot well from deep and he did shoot well from the line. He was efficient in his possession of the basketball overall without turning it over. They defeated Toronto 128-112, smacked Charlotte 130-99, defeated Dallas 132-125, and gave Washington an almighty heave 142-129. The big question right now, have the Bucks finally got the best load share in the NBA? I think Giannis probably tried to give a little too much too early, and it caused chemistry issues. Not necessarily for Dame, because he's just trying to get Dame involved, but your Brook Lopez's, your Bobby Portis's, and your Chris Middletons certainly had an issue with it. They couldn't find their touch, they couldn't find their consistency. Because everyone needs to feed off Giannis. And now all of a sudden he's gone, stuff it, I'm going back into Giannis mode. And when he goes into Giannis mode, he is arguably the best player on the planet. His very best was the best on the planet, as far as the two-way nature of his game. But I think right now he just needs to continue doing it, and everyone else is going to get their looks. Damian Lillard is going to get looks, because Damian Lillard's now going to get a lot of one-on-one isolation. Giannis is going to draw one-on-one isolation or a double, and they will double Giannis before they double Dame. I think the way they're doing it now is correct. I think Giannis does need to be your number one option. But I mean, if your second option's Dame and he's going to average 25, 28 on a week where you have 40 pieces, probably not going to be too mad. I think Milwaukee have this one right at the moment. They just have the load share correct. It's exactly what they need to do if they're going to be successful. New York had a successful week and bounced back above 500 once again. 3-1, 8-6 overall now. Best performer was Jalen Brunson. Wasn't anything to speak of defensively, but 28.3 points, 3.8 rebounds, 7 assists on 1.5 turnovers. Efficient scoring from the field by a small guard standard. Defeated Atlanta 116-114. Defeated Washington 120-99 and defeated Charlotte 122-108. However, did go down to Minnesota, and that's probably a fair test as well when you consider where Atlanta, Washington and Charlotte sit in the East and how Minnesota stacks up in the West. Probably a fair assessment of how New York are faring so far. But are they too offensively minded in their starting five? There's just a lot of attempted point scoring with this team. It's not something I dislike. It's just not something I think is very favourable to them. It's okay to want to score the basketball. It's okay to have the ability to score the basketball. I just don't necessarily think that you can be so top-heavy offensively overall in the starting five and try and win basketball games. Because Mitchell Robinson's a nice big, but he's not even Miles Turner. And you're not going to win games if your best defender's an interior defender and you're not a great help defensive team. You're going to struggle, and this is the issue that they're going to have. I think offensively, I think them and Indiana would be a really good playoff series. But then it comes down to a battle of leadership and composure, and at that point I don't trust the Knicks. I would trust Indiana. I just think they're too offensively minded in their starting five. They need to have a real standout defender. They need to have someone who's really key to lead the team in that sense. The leader is on screen, Jalen Brunson, in my opinion. There's no doubt about it. He has been the difference in New York in the last season and a half. I don't think anyone's going to defeat. Going to ignore that. But you can't be so offensively minded in your starting five. Even the Warriors at their peak weren't 100% offensively minded. Their offense was huge, but it's defensively where teams win games and win championships. That's a fact as old as time, and one that is not going to go away anytime soon. So for the Knicks, they need to work out something. They need to get a key rotation in defensively if they're going to make a splash. Another team that was 3-1, the Orlando Magic, now 8-5 on the season, and their young guns are really just starting to take effect where they can. Best performer again, Paolo Banchero, I'm pretty sure it's Banchero. 18.3 points, 6.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, a steal and a block on less than 3 turnovers. Would like to see a power forward of his nature way further up there in the field goal percentage, but I do like the 3-point conversion. It sort of makes up a little bit when you're going to be getting an extra point off those shots. Free throw percentage, look, you need to just make your free throws. It's as simple as that. For a big, I want a minimum 7 out of 10. For a guard, I want a minimum 8 out of 10. That should be the standard. They're free. It's always 10 feet high. It's always 15 feet away. They did lose their opening game of the week to Brooklyn, 124-104, but did get those back-to-back wins on Chicago and handed a loss to Indiana as well. The question is, when is one of them going to truly scruff this team by the neck and truly make it theirs? Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, Banchero. It's going to be one of those 4 guys, but at the moment they're willing to load share. And I think they don't want to step on anyone's toes because of how players can be at a young age. Certainly the attitudes towards leadership at times can be very different. But one of them has to say, right, this is my team. I'm the number one option. We're playing through me. We're getting it done because of me. That's, I think, the only issue with Orlando right now is, as good as the load sharing is, there's also the issue of the load sharing. And this is why. We'll see how it goes. I just think there's a little more work to do as far as the leadership standpoint there. But they clearly have the talent. I mean, they're 3 games above 500. This is a team that was 5-20, 25 games in last year and was above 500 for the rest of the season, based on the games played from that point. They can play, they can win, they've got chemistry. But I think someone just needs to stand up and take complete ownership of this team. Over to Philadelphia, certainly wasn't their best week, but certainly wasn't their worst week. They remain 10 wins on the season, 2-2 on the week. Embiid with a huge week, which says a lot because, they went 2-2 with this output. 30.8 points, 10 rebounds, 7.5 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.3 blocks. So defensively, he was certainly out. Offensively, he didn't convert how he would have liked. 49.4% from the field and 18.2% from deep. He's been above that 50% mark from the field for a couple of years now. 18.2% from deep. He likes to take threes, but he needs to be able to make them as well. They lost to Indiana 132-126, lost to Boston 117-107, so that's another addition to that title fight. But took care of Atlanta as they should have, defeated Brooklyn as they should have. And just with the way their offense is gelling, I know it's 4 weeks worth of sample. But do you just think that Embiid is seeing that passing light and that offensive generation that the counterpart he so desperately wants to go against in Jokic is doing already? If he's starting to see the passing light, good luck. Because he's got the ability to do it, he's got the size to do it, he's a better athlete, he's a better defender. But right now, he's not necessarily playing to a championship level of basketball. That's why he's been a perennial second-round player. And a guy that has 2 scoring titles on the MVP should not be a perennial second-round player. So if he's starting to see that passing light, if he's starting to generate extra offense out of his hands, you've got Maxey who's coming into his own. You've got plenty of other pieces that can contribute as 3rd, 4th and 5th options and play D. Philly, once again, will look to make a huge run there in the East. Right now they're second. It's Boston, it's Philly, it's Milwaukee. It's looking like the 80s once again. Let's see how this one continues to play out. Let's see how Philadelphia look. But if Embiid's starting to see that passing light and he's going to put 30-10-7 or 30-10-8 up, Philadelphia are a dangerous team. They're a deep team. They're a dangerous team. We'll see how they pan out. Over to Toronto. They are 1-2 on the week, 6-7 on the season. And Scotty Barnes back to being their best performer. 20 points, 6.3 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 0.3 steals, 0.3 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. 53.5 from the field, 61.5 from deep, and 75% from the free throw line. Efficient scoring. Needed a little more defense. It's what he's sort of prided himself on as a player, but he's continuing to take that step. Lost to Milwaukee, as you would expect, and lost to Boston, as you would expect, and took care of Detroit. Smacked them, actually, as you would expect. The big talk for the team right now, though, is Zach LaVine a genuine target in a trade? My only question is, if he is a genuine target in a trade, who are you losing for him? If you're Toronto, you don't want to risk your young guys. But your young guys also, at this stage, still include Pascal Siakam. Do you try and bundle a heap of other players together? Because your starting lineup also is pretty complementary when you add in the fact of Jakob Poeltl, when you add in the fact of Dennis Schroeder, when you've got Gary Trent Jr. on the team, when you've still got Boucher on the team. It's a lot of questions. A lot of questions. That's their core 7. Who do they want to get rid of out of that core 7 potentially for a Zach LaVine trade? Don't know. Not something that I think they're considering either. But that's the big talk right now. And if they're going to get towards that 500 mark and they need that extra scorer, they're going to have to look at it. But who are they going to put in place in a trade for Zach LaVine? I don't have an answer for it. I'm not too sure that Toronto do either. Final team in the East, Washington, 0-3 in the week, 2-11 on the season. One of the 2 worst teams in the conference. Kyle Kuzma continues to be their best player. Not necessarily a compliment when you look at the splits there. 21 points, 4.3 rebounds, 7 assists, 0.7 steals and 0.3 blocks. Less than 2 turnovers, great, but he's not scoring at more than 44% from the field overall. Getting it done okay from deep and passable at the free throw line. Lost to Dallas, 130-117. Got smacked by New York and then lost to Milwaukee. And now the question is, when will Jordan Poole be off the team? Because that's the ultimate question right now as to who will and won't be there as this season progresses, and apparently Washington are done. But if you get rid of Jordan Poole, you've seen the way he's played. Where does he go? What do you get? Is there any value? Is there any substance? What is this team doing? It's not an appealing market to go and play in. It's not an appealing market to go and coach in. Washington are just absolutely stuck in the doldrums right now. The guy they angled for in the off-season, they're already considering getting rid of. That never, ever bodes well for anybody. I just don't know what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. But at the end of the day, they are genuinely ready to get rid of Jordan Poole. They're already trying to bust this team up. Well done. Congratulations, Washington. You played yourself. Quick rundown of the top 10 in the East. As we mentioned, the 3 best teams, the Celtics, the Celtics, the Sixers, and the Bucks. Miami is slowly getting on their tail. Again, a genuine top 4 team. The Magic and the Pacers playing well. The Knicks playing well. I think the Cavaliers will continue to make a move as their lineup mixes and matches. I don't think you see the Hawks go much further than where they're at. They're a playing team at best. And the Nets, I think, just they need to try and work something out. Cam Thomas comes back into this team. They're a different looking unit. That is how the East lays at the moment. Your top 2 teams, certainly the clear front runners right now. The Bucks trying to sort of make heed and make some inroads where they can, and they're going to be able to if Giannis keeps going on a tear. And Miami just continue to be Miami. Jimmy Butler's continuing to find his feet. Eastern Conference Player of the Week, Damian Lillard. 4-0 on the week. Played all 4 games, 33 minutes a game. We talked about his numbers earlier. Dame's a guy who's going to get his shots. He's now going to get his possessions, and it certainly helps when Giannis is playing the way he's playing. Again, they fed Dame early. They tried to get him everything under the book that they could. Unfortunately, it just disrupted things a little bit. There was no flow, and I think Dame pretty much now has just said, hey, dude, just go and do what you want to do. Go and do what you need to do, because when you do it best. You do it better than anyone else. Really good signs there from Dame. Really good signs for the Bucks if Dame's able to be putting this sort of production up when, as I mentioned, Giannis had 2 40 pieces this week. He just didn't play all 4 games. Plays all 4 games. I think you can work out who's probably sitting in this slide here. The Eastern Conference has a really interesting outlay to it already 4 weeks into the NBA season. Of course, after the East, we have to look at the West. And we'll start with the Clippers, who are 2-1 on the week. They snapped their losing streak with James Harden, and in general, they move up to 5-7 on the season and look like they might be able to start building a little bit of confidence in amongst their group. Paul George, a sensational week, their best player, and looking like the regular Paul George that we see, and the one that's certainly had a case as one of the best small forwards in the league for the better part of a decade. 28.7 points, 6.7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals and 0.3 blocks a game on 2 turnovers, 50-40, 100 splits. They lost to Denver in this one, couldn't quite get the job done. They then went on to defeat Houston and also defeat San Antonio. Big question though, is Westbrook the guy that should be the 6th man on this team? Westbrook's smart enough to know he's been the fall guy before. Smart enough to know that he's not going to escape it. He also understands that the media aren't paying attention to anything else other than him and James Harden right now. So, what does he do? He goes to the bench. Now, will that be better for the team? Who knows? it's certainly one that they would be thankful is going ahead, because someone needed to go to the bench. Someone needed to make that call. And unfortunately in today's game, coaches don't have the necessary stones to call players out to do it. I don't necessarily like the idea of Westbrook on the second unit, but I think if you're going to have him as the sixth man, then you've got to let him play when he's on the floor. This can't be a matter of, oh yeah, he's just a rotation. No, you need to let him run the second unit. He's won an MVP. He's won multiple scoring titles and multiple assist titles. This can't be a guy that just rocks up and comes off the bench. He needs to be a genuine second leader. He needs to be probably, needs to remain a third, fourth option on this team, not just a guy who's going to come and plug and play. Because plug and play Westbrook's not going to do anything. The Clippers have seen what they can do when he's out and about, when he's successful in playing his own game. They need to keep that in mind when they make this decision. Of course, for Dallas, 1-3 on the week. They're still 9-5, so they're still trying, being reasonably competitive. But 1-3 on the week doesn't bode well, particularly when the teams they lost to are teams they would definitely have to look at facing potentially in a postseason at some stage. Luka, with an okay week, inefficient, but an okay week. 25.5 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 0.8 steals, 4 turnovers a game, less than 45% from the field. Shooting from deep has improved. His free throw percentage still needs working. Lost to the Pelicans, 131-110. Did defeat Washington, 130-117, but did lose to Milwaukee, 132-125. Lost to Sacramento, 129-113. Does this yet again become another year for Dallas where it's talking about everyone's numbers and not about their results? Because that's the big thing that's helped Dallas over the last couple of seasons. There's been huge numbers around the place, so therefore they've got good players. But they haven't got anything to show for it. Just mind-boggling stuff in that sense. But of course, they made the Western Conference Finals in 2021. I get that. But what have they done in 2022? What did they do in 2023? It's alright to absolutely rack up these great numbers. Numbers that are comparable to your Oscar Robinsons and your Jerry Wests and your Michael Jordans as far as big overall stat lines. But you've got to get results. Oscar eventually got a result. Jerry West eventually got a result. Pretty sure Jordan got a few results in his day. Dallas right now, they're racking up the numbers. It's great to see. Yeah, it's entertaining. But if you're not going to get a result out of it, they're just numbers. And at the end of the day, someone has to get numbers on a bad team. Record's 9-5, so they should be making the postseason here, but just can't become a story of numbers there for Dallas. Denver remain one of the benchmarks, if not the benchmarks, in the West. 2-2 on the week, 10-4 on the season. And of course, Jokic with that ejection in Game 4 with Mike Malone. But he still had a pretty good week when you consider everything around that. 21.3 points, 11.8 rebounds, 9.8 assists on 3 turnovers. That's been his worst week this season. A rounded 21, 12, and 10 has been his worst week this season. To give you an idea, Domantas Sabonis essentially one player of the week for me with those numbers last week. Big difference. Inefficient by his standards, 46.9 from the field, 21.1 from deep, still making them at the line. They defeated the Clippers by 3, the barest of margins. We spoke about that before. They lost to the Pelicans, and they lost to Cleveland. Did get a win against Detroit. And I just wonder whether, when you're looking at that team, and you're looking at the depth, there are still some veteran players around. Very rare a very good team wins without a veteran. And I just wonder, particularly when you look at the comments Reggie Jackson made about how much and how highly he speaks of Nikola Jokic, whether Reggie Jackson's that veteran key piece to repeat. He's been able to play roles on plenty of teams in big moments and get the job done. Maybe he's the guy that Denver need to do that again. Stood up in their game against Detroit. Again, I know it's Detroit. Detroit's the worst team in the league. But someone had to do it. And championship teams, regardless of the sport, they win well and they win scrappy. They win on their terms and they win on the opposition's terms. I think Reggie Jackson's that kind of guy that's going to be able to help them if they get into more of those situations. I would not want to see Reggie Jackson off this team. I don't think it's a championship deciding decision if that was moved on, but you need someone with his ability to be that guy to come out and go, yep, okay, coach, I know you're only going to play me 5 minutes a game for the next month, but if you need me tonight for 35 minutes, I'm going to go out and compete. You don't have any players like that. You need those selfless veteran leaders on the team to get the job done. And that's exactly what Golden State need, and they currently don't have it. 1-3 on the week, 7-8 on the season. Their best performer was Chris Paul, who, he had an okay season. You got to remember how long Chris Paul's been in the league. He's had an okay week, 14.3 points, 4.5 rebounds, 8.8 assists, surpassed Spurs point guard, 2.3 steals, 0.3 blocks on 1.5 turnovers. He played in all of their games. And efficient scoring splits by his standards and certainly by any small guard standards. They did go down, though, in some really interesting contests. Lost to Minnesota 104 1-on-1. Could have won that game. Went to a loss first up with OKC, which was pretty dominant by them. Had to be forced into OT, though, in the second game and lost that one. So it could have been a 3-on-1 week here for Golden State, which would have seen them in a far better position, record-wise, and certainly a far better position in the seedings. But my big question comes down to the idiot that got himself suspended for 5 games. And that is, what does Draymond Green have over this team? There's got to be something there somewhere that we don't know about as to why he keeps getting away with this stuff, why he continues to do this stuff, why he's barely punished for it, and not only that, extended for it. At some point, someone has to ask the question, what are they doing? What are they thinking? Why is he still about? Because until they do, it's just going to continue to be an absolute clown show outside of the leadership, at this point, of Chris Paul and Steph Curry. The way Clay's playing and his attitude right now, yeah, I can see why he's going to go into the free agent market. But shooters got to have their legs under them. He just hit 20 points for the first time this season. What are we, 15 games in? This is a guy who was a perennial all-star 5 times in a row during their championship and their finals run in the late 2010s. A guy whose numbers were comparable to Sidney Moncrief and to Mitch Richmond and to Ray Allen. Some pretty good company there at the shooting guard position. But enough about that again. I just need to know why won't the team do anything about it? I know he's a point forward. I know he's a defender. This whole generational defender thing, by the way, throw it out the door. The whole better than Dennis Rodman thing, throw it out the door. Could guard Shaq, throw it out the door. He's a nice passing power forward who plays some good defense. But he's very much idyllic in a situation where he has to pass and set screens for arguably the 2 best shooters ever. Does make a big difference. I just want to know what the team's got on him. Or what he's got on the team. Because it's the only reason he could possibly be there. We'll see. We'll have a look. Houston 0-3. Season 6-6. Alperen Sengun, 25.3 points, 10.3 rebounds, 4.7 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.7 blocks, 4.3 turnovers. Efficient splits outside of the free throw line. Lost all 3 of their games. But I think it's their best defeated week for 3 years. You're within 2 possessions of the Clippers, 1 point of the Lakers, and 2 possessions of Golden State. This is something that Houston wouldn't have even thought of doing last season. But something has just clicked with this team. Now, I do want to cut all the Sengun's doing better than Jokic at this age. Yes. Okay. Well done. There were guys that were 21 years old. I mean, look at LeBron's 21-year-old season and compare it to a lot of other guys at 21. Yeah, okay. But sitting there going, it's comparable to LeBron at 21. Bit different. LeBron's turned into a top 3 player all time. But Sengun's comparable to Jokic. Jokic a top 30 player all time. Just pump the brakes on it a little bit. I know we're excited and I know things are going well in Houston. Obviously the slump's not great and you wonder if the bubble has burst. I think that's a fair assessment. You're 12 games in, you're 6-6. At one point, you were 6-3 and didn't think at any point, other than being maybe 2-1 early in the season, you'd be above 500. I think it's their best defeated week for at least 3 years. Because it's a competitive defeated week. Getting beat by double digits in every game each week's not a good look. To be within 1 and 2 possessions, the Lakers look like they're potentially going to be a playoff team. The Clippers have the ability to be a playoff team. Golden State have the ability to be a playoff team. And you're going to be within 1 point and at max 2 possessions away from defeating them. Good result. A real good litmus test there for the Rockets. Over to the Lakers, 3-1 on the week. They're starting to bounce back a little bit there. 8-6 on the season, so they're just above 500. LeBron with a massive week there. Was clearly the Lakers' best player. 29 points, 7.5 rebounds, 8.8 assists, 2.5 steals, 0.3 blocks and 3.8 turnovers. Efficient splits by his standards. Still wish that he was, with the amount of times he got to the line, should have been an 80% free throw shooter. My goodness, he should have been an 80% free throw shooter for a career. They defeated Memphis 134-107. They defeated Sacramento 125-110. Sorry, lost to Sacramento 125-110. Defeated Portland and Houston respectively. But I think they're going to have to continue to get consistent possessions to Anthony Davis on the offensive end. Of course, he's able to hold it up defensively. I think right now he's having a Defensive Player of the Year season. I'm shocked that he doesn't have a Defensive Player of the Year already. He probably should have had one when he was in New Orleans. But no one cared when he was in New Orleans because, well, look, he's just this really good player and they're not really much of a team. But in hindsight, if I turn around and tell you that Anthony Davis at one point was playing with Rajon Rondo and DeMarcus Cousins, at one point he was also buddied up with Drew Holiday, makes you wonder how much he's wasted. It really makes you wonder how much he's wasted. But they've got to get him more possessions. You can't have games where all of a sudden he's going from 20 shots a game to 9 shots a game. That's just not possible. That is not conducive to winning basketball, particularly for a guy of his talent and ability. Something needs to be looked at there really, really soon as to how they're going to consistently get possessions. LeBron's not giving up possession of the basketball. That's anyone who really believes that's an idiot. He's clearly not on a minutes restriction, and I don't want to hear about him whinging about not being on his minutes restriction. He can make that decision. You can't tell me a guy with that level of gravitas in the sport doesn't have that kind of pull. I don't want to hear it. That's excuse laden. But they do need to get more possessions into him. I would think that he deserves more possessions than Rui Hachimura. That needs to start happening more and more on the offensive end. And it's not even necessarily about the successful buckets, it's about him being involved in the game. If he's not involved in the game, he's not going to have any interest. Simple for me, the Lakers really do need to get more possessions into Anthony Davis. Over to Memphis, 1-2 on the week again, got another win. 3-10 on the season, 7 games behind, not a good look. Santi Aldama, that is, was their best player in the week. And he had a really nice week, particularly when you look at the fact that he was essentially their sixth man. 23 points, 9 rebounds, 4.3 assists, some consistent contributions defensively. Would like to see a little more efficient on the offensive end from the floor and from the free throw line, but really stepping up where he needed to. Lost to the Lakers, defeated the Spurs, lost to the Celtics. Were close against Boston too. They will rue that missed opportunity. Again, looking at the San Antonio game, they should have won that one. And they did. The ultimate question, though, is what do they do defensively on the perimeter without Marcus Smart, who looks to be out for up to 5 weeks. That's a big change in circumstance. That's a big change in how your perimeter lineup looks. I don't know. Can this team really afford to lose a former Defensive Player of the Year on the perimeter when they can't win games to begin with? And last year's Defensive Player of the Year is not having a good season. Now, I'm not saying Memphis is certainly looking ahead and that maybe they might be able to get a favourable position to, take advantage of a really good young talent that might be coming down the pipeline. But they're going to need to do something, otherwise that's their next best option. And they're still 10, 12 games away from Ja Morant even being with the team, if he's not already there and in practice and trying to work things out. But they could be in a real spot of bother here without Marcus Smart out on the perimeter. I don't know. This is, see, again, use Dylan Brooks as a scapegoat. He's gone. Would have been nice to have someone like him still in the rotation. Thank you from Houston, by the way. Be interesting. Memphis could be in a real spot of bother here. They might go on an absolute tear. But if my grandmother had wheels, she would be a bike. Over to Minnesota, they continue to go on a nice run. 3-1 on the week, 10-3 on the season, and Karl Anthony Towns stepping up and having a really nice week there, not necessarily forcing the issue and still getting the job done there for the Timberwolves. 26.8 points, 7.3 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 50-40-90 shooting splits that he brags about having consistently all the time. Actually had them this week. Chipped in a little bit defensively as well. Efficient scoring, low turnover numbers, getting wins. That's what you need. Got the win against Golden State in a really battle-out affair. Lost to Phoenix. Phoenix on an absolute tear this week, and we'll get to Kevin Durant in a moment. My goodness. They defeated New Orleans in a tight one and got away with a win against New York. My question is can they hold up defensively in the postseason? Because that's going to be the challenge for them. They need to be able to compete against Sacramento. They need to be able to compete against Denver. They're probably your two most high-octane offensive teams that are going to be in the postseason at this point. And I just need to know whether their defense will be able to hold out. If it can hold out, different ballgame, because they're a really competitive unit. If it can't hold out, they're in a real spot of bother, because other opposition teams will take real big advantage of them. It could be very interesting times indeed for Minnesota if that's the case. Because then the arguments start, then the fighting starts, then the selfishness starts. And if you're going to have all of that coupled with volatile personalities, then Minnesota squander a season. And right now, if you're a Minnesota fan, you're not wanting to squander a season. If you're a Minnesota player, you're certainly looking, they want to be a second round team at worst. Ideally a conference finalist here in the West. A lot of hurdles to jump through still on this season. But if their defense can hold up in the playoffs, I mean, they could be one of the last two teams in the West. They play good enough, they might be the only team left in the West. I think that's a really far-flung idea, but we'll see how that continues to pan out. New Orleans, they had a nice bounce-back week. They're finally at 500 on the season, 3-1 overall, 7-7. 3-1 on the week overall, 7-7 overall in the season. Brandon Ingram with a nice week, 26.8 points, 5.8 rebounds, 5.5 assists. One steal there, okay, not great defensively, but less than 3 turnovers a game, efficient shooting splits, getting the job done. They defeated Dallas, they defeated Denver, lost to Minnesota, then smacked Sacramento. Absolutely smacked Sacramento. And I just wonder whether this team started to hit a little bit of a groove. Maybe Zion Williamson has realised that he needs to work and earn and fit into this unit, because there are plenty of opportunities. I just hope New Orleans really are starting to find that groove. I hope they get healthy. I hope everyone there just continues to play some really good basketball, because they've got the talent and they can really shake things up. Ingram was the most improved player, 3-4 seasons ago? Hasn't really done much since. So it's this ability to, if he has plateaued, to continue to show that leadership and the ability to be a number one. And if he's going to continue to do that, then all of a sudden they become a better team. Zion fits into the unit, they become a better team. Jonas Valanciunas has finally become a consistent, solid big. Went years of having 20 and 10 and then 7 and 6. Now he's consistently putting up 15, 16 and 10 every night. And he's a massive unit. Dyson Daniels now getting minutes from the point guard position, particularly as a defender. So that sort of shows, okay, we probably are lacking in some rotations right now, but we've also got some capable players to fill the gaps. So I think New Orleans just starting to find a little groove here. We will see a couple of hiccups here or there. Hopefully they're only small hiccups or small little road bumps in the road. But they're not too bad of a team. They're starting to look okay. They're starting to really get through things. Speaking of a team that's looking okay and starting to get through things, that's the Oklahoma City Thunder. 4-0 on the week, 10-4 on the season. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander making another statement. 30 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 3.3 steals, 0.8 blocks, 2.5 turnovers, effective and efficient shooting. Won all 4 of their games this week. They smacked the Spurs, they smacked the Warriors, they smacked Portland, and they took care of Golden State in OT in their second matchup. Right now, is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander an MVP candidate? I think he's the best guard in the league. Not just shooting guard in the league. He gets it done on both ends. He gets it done efficiently. He leads his team to wins. He doesn't miss games. What more has to be done? Oklahoma City's record right now means they're probably on track to try and get 10 games above 500. If they get 10 games above 500, playoffs are the option. Not maybe, they are the option. They're the only option. And if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be healthy, if he's going to continue to lead Oklahoma City to records like this, and he's going to continue to play the way he is, I think he is a genuine MVP candidate. I think he's one of the 3 best players in the league this season. And I don't have him at number 3 right now. I think people just need to sit up and take notice. And yes, there's the criticism of postseason. Yes, there's the criticism of sitting last year. But if you're going to assess a season, assess it on the season and what's happened on the season. Right now, I think he's the best guard in the league. I think he's a top 3 player in the league. And I think he's a genuine MVP candidate. Oklahoma's record will ultimately dictate it. But if he's going to start scoring the way he is, defending the way he is, doing it efficiently, winning games, really easy for me to select. Speaking of guy who's an MVP candidate and has been for some time, Kevin Durant, look at the numbers there this week. My goodness gracious. 3-0 on the week, 7-6 on the season. Phoenix starting to rebuild once again. Durant had 36 points, 7.7 rebounds, 8.3 assists, 0.7 steals and a block. Okay, had the 3.3 turnovers. He had a lot of the basketball. But add to that he shot 62.5% from the field and would have still been better off shooting threes at a clip of 63.2% and made every free throw. How do you stop a guy who's around 36, 8 and 8 on 60, 60, 100? They beat Minnesota. They beat Utah twice. The whole issue with Phoenix, though, is can their team's big 3 build chemistry? Will they run into a Clippers situation from 2020 where they don't play enough games together, and when it comes to trying to crunch the numbers, they don't get the job done? Because otherwise Phoenix is a top 4 team in the West. Probably a top 2 team in the West. I think on precedence you would have to just put them ahead of Minnesota. But you got a guy like Kevin Durant who's still going out there and putting up those levels and numbers. They're winning games. There's no issue at the top. And Devin Booker's clearly been a catalyst for their wins. I still think that this team is Devin Booker's. And it comes down to not a Spurs-like situation, but the Spurs, they win all those games for all those years. Even when Duncan wasn't playing his best, or wasn't the outright man statistically. They don't win if he's not. And Devin Booker's the same with Phoenix. Not winning games if he's not there. I just wonder whether Bradley Beal's going to get enough games in with them in time as a unit to build enough chemistry to be successful in a postseason run. If they can do that, then sky's the limit. I mean, you're going to have Kevin Durant averaging 30 a game. Devin Booker can average 30 a game. Bradley Beal only has to average 20. He's not going to have any pressure on him when you look at these 2 guys. That's the real question for me for Phoenix. Can they build enough chemistry? It's the only thing that will potentially hold them back. Speaking of being held back, that's certainly Portland right now. 0-4 on the week, 3-10 on the season. They are one of the worst teams in the league. Jeremy Grant with another leading week for that team, but it wasn't anything special by any means. 20.3 points, 2.3 rebounds, 1.8 assists. When your leading player is putting up those kind of numbers, you are in a spot of bother. 1 steal, 0.3 blocks, 2 turnovers a game. At least he was efficient at the turnover front. Certainly wasn't on the scoring front. Less than 45% from the field. Doesn't matter what you do anywhere else. You're only making less than 45% of your shots. Lost all of their games. It's going to be a matter of seeing how they adjust with the outlook that Scoot Henderson and Malcolm Brogdon are going to be back in the team very soon. Chemistry does change a little bit. Robert Williams being out is a huge factor there. DeAndre Ayton needs to hurry up and stand up. I just want to see how this adjustment is with essentially their two lead guards coming back in. Anthony Simons out as well. So they've had a big smack of injuries right now. I mean, Jeremy Grant, when you factor in DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, that's an okay call. That's an okay lineup that it needs to build a little bit. But now you've got to go back into an adjustment again where you've had 2 or 3 weeks where you're running through Grant. And now, definitely you're going to want to get the ball in Brogdon's hands more. Scoot Henderson's a number 2 pick, so it's not like he's just going to sit idly by. You would certainly hope not. Portland's 0-4 week. I think it's probably going to see something like that for the next couple of weeks. I don't think their record's going to improve too greatly until at least the middle of December, so give it another 3 weeks on that one there. But yeah, the adjustment for Brogdon and Scoot is ultimately what we're waiting to see right now over in Portland. Sacramento continue to roll on. Had another nice week, 3-1 there, 8-5 in the season, continuing to be a top 3, top 4 team in the West. I still think their best player though was Sabonis, 24.5 points, 13.5 rebounds, 7 assists. Really embraced that Jokic role, 0.8 steals, 0.5 blocks, 3.5 turnovers. Again, high possession rate. But when you factor in the fact he's shooting almost 71% from the field and over 50% from deep, probably going to take an extra turnover here. There's a lot of conversion going on to counteract that. 73.9 from the free throw line. Sabonis is a guy who shoots above 70% as a big. Happy. He's probably closer to 75 though when he wants to. Defeated the Lakers, defeated the Spurs, defeated the Mavericks, lost to New Orleans. I think the real question is though for Sacramento, in order for them to have the greater success, De'Aaron Fox is clearly an all-star. De'Aaron Fox is clearly one of their 2 best players. But I think De'Aaron Fox needs to go into a Jamal Murray type role with Sabonis. I am loving the whole idea that it could very well be Sacramento and Denver in a playoff series. I would watch every minute of that playoff series. There's no doubt in my mind I would watch every minute of that playoff series. Because the dynamic duo of Sabonis and Fox taking on the established duo of Jokic and Murray is mouthwatering. That's good basketball. That's something you want to tune into. People realise with Denver how good they were last year. Sacramento have a little bit of touch about that. Defensively, I don't think they're as good, obviously. But they've got that ability when they really want to step up and do this. And I just think if De'Aaron Fox can get into that Jamal Murray type role, we're looking at a far better team. I think you're looking at a more effective De'Aaron Fox. Numbers aren't everything. I think he's going to be more effective in that role. I think Sabonis can continue to roll at that 20 to 25 points a game. Genuinely one of the best rebounders in the league. Can pass for a big man. Has always been able to pass for a big man. He's an efficient scorer. Couple that in with De'Aaron Fox, who's an all-star level point guard who can shoot the ball. You've got Keegan Murray and all these guys on the team. Take advantage of it. Sacramento could be a really dangerous team if they can embrace that kind of combination and almost, in a sense, try and mimic what Denver are doing. Be interesting to see. Over to the Spurs, again, just on struggle street. 0-4 on the week, 3-11 on the season. They're probably lucky that Detroit exist at this point. I thought Zach Collins was their best player. 17.3 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3 assists. Efficient scoring splits for the big man. I'd like a little more defense, but still turning the ball over a lot for a guy who had 17 points a game. Lost all of their games there, and I think this is the last stand of Greg Popovich. And it's a question that's always been asked, and no one likes to really bring it up. Who has he ever developed? From a genuinely young team with no veterans whatsoever, in fully actually coaching and growing a side, when has he done it? Because he's now got the opportunity to do it. I don't know whether he's too old and doesn't have the patience. But it's not working and it's not happening. The Spurs in 1990 weren't great. David Robinson was a pretty good player. Came into the league as one of the 3 best centres in the league. 98, Tim Duncan. He came in as one of the 5 best players in the league. Not just power forwards, players. Had plenty of vets around him. Not the case here at the moment with the Spurs. I don't think the minutes management at the moment has been great at Wembanyama, even though he's, people sat there. This is another one that I really love to hear, that Wembanyama, because Daniel Tice had a good game on him, cannot be Rookie of the Year. Okay then, so for everyone that's in that same boat, I suppose that we can't have any consideration for LeBron being an all-time great player because of those 8 points in Dallas in the 2011 finals. By your own logic. Thanks. Cheers. Awesome. No worries. Seriously. So people need to weigh into some, really consider some things before they open their mouth. I just think this is going to be Popovich's last stand. He wants to see Wembanyama develop and become a star. Whether he's done at the end of this year, I know he signed an extension, but whether he's done at the end of this year or next year, I just think this is his last stand. I think it's sort of showing just the level that they're at as a team. It's not ideal. It is what it is. But yeah, I just think this is going to now be Popovich's last stand. There's not really much more that can be done, particularly when the team's not growing. Finally, in Utah, the last team of the Western Conference. 1-2 on the week, 4-9 on the season. Jordan Clarkson with a solid week. Efficient overall, realistically, when you look at it. 29.7 points, 3.7 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 1.7 steals, 1 turnover a game, 50-40-80 shooting splits. Really good week for him. Defeated Portland, as you would expect. Lost their games to Phoenix, ironically, as you would expect. But the key is finding another defensive gem because Walker Kessler's out and they don't look like the same side. They need someone who's going to step up on the perimeter and play that role. They need another big who's going to step up and play that role. Until then, Utah are going to continue to float around like they are. They had a really good run when things started to click and people didn't expect things last season. Then they got injured and they never bounced back. And they still haven't bounced back. And they're getting injured again. Which means that they're going to have to bounce a lot further if they're ever going to try and return to a 500 level. Walker Kessler, very good defender. One of the league's leading defenders. A future Defensive Player of the Year level candidate. But right now, Utah don't have anything in the way of trying to combat defensively. Especially with Kessler being out. They need someone solid. And I'm talking like genuinely solid defensively on the perimeter. They need another backup defensive big. Just changes the dynamic of this team so much. Until then, they're going to probably continue to wallow and squander a little bit with how things are. Top 10 of the West. The Western Conference sits after 4 weeks. Timberwolves, numero uno. You've then got the Nuggets, the Thunder. The Mavericks are still floating in there. The Kings are floating in there. The Lakers, as I mentioned, top 6. The Rockets have dropped down, but the Suns have jumped up. The Pelicans have been consistent. The Warriors are hanging on. I think your top 2 teams there are going to consistently be there in the West. I think if the Thunder are able to continue to get things going, they'll be a top 4 team. I don't trust the Mavericks. I think the Kings can do it. In fact, I trust the Lakers a little bit more over the Mavericks right now because there's a little more substance to their game, but that's not saying much. I think Phoenix jump in. Where everyone else goes from there, I don't know. The Warriors are still a team that can get it done if they choose to, but they're just too old. They just don't have the level of leadership beyond Steph Curry and Chris Paul at the moment to get that done. And that's the lay land in the West right now. And of course, over to the last bit of my presentation as usual. West Player of the Week, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 4 games, 30.1 minutes a game, 4.0, and that should give you an idea of the pace right now. He's playing 30 minutes a night and averaging 35 and 6 and 3 and 1 whilst going 50, 40, 100 from the field. That should give you an idea of the pace that's being played in the league at this point. Go and factor in everything else from a different era where you look at someone like a Jerry West or you look at someone like an Oscar Robertson and you look at their numbers in the perimeter and you go, geez, they played a lot of minutes. Look at how, efficiency has changed. There's no doubt about that. The game's also 60 years into the future, ladies and gentlemen. But what pace are these teams playing at? How many possessions are these teams getting up? You're playing 30 minutes a night and averaging 30. You're a point a minute. I hope people realise how extraordinary that is. A point a minute. Massive props to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander though. Player of the West for week 4. And as I mentioned there, I think he's jumped into genuine MVP conversations and I think he's one of the 3 best players in the league this season. Thanks for tuning in, guys. That's my wrap of week 4 of the 2023-24 NBA season. A lot going on. Some really big winning teams this week. Some really bad teams as well. And I think we're just starting to see a lot of teams settle. And everyone will start to really sift through themselves as December approaches and certainly as December completes. Anyway, guys, that's been me. I'm out.